Um, so autoimmune has really been told to us that your body's attacking itself, but the body's not really attacking itself. It's that your immune system was triggered and it says something's in here, I got to help you. But the problem is your cells are now doing way too good of a job. And as much as you say, like, it's okay, you don't have to be an A student anymore, you can stop, it continues to do it until you get rid of what's in there causing the interference. So as we started to look at Lamont, like we're looking at what is in her profile that's starting to say, pay attention. And she's traveled a ton. She's been all over the world. So is it metals? Is it chemicals? Is it molds? And she does have some chemicals going on massively. Mold was a big factor. And mold is one of those things where when you're exposed, you're a warm, wet, beautiful place to live. And if it doesn't tell you, you don't tell it to leave, it's like, I'm hanging out, we're good, right? So then you sprinkle in some chemicals and then you get COVID and whatever, and then you have trauma in your life, and now you tip the bucket, and now you're starting to express whatever autoimmune that was presented. And sometimes there's a little DNA mutation that can occur that if you have a predisposition, now you've just tipped the bucket into that predisposition. So the idea is if we can get rid of the interference, we can calm the gene down, and now it's not expressing the way it was expressing. And so that's why Lamont is looking at her mold, and why she's here currently. She has her why, right? Um, I have someone else in the group who has a really, really bad plaque psoriasis, and heavy metals is a really bad one. And uranium, interestingly enough, we have a lot of it in Tucson water because of the White Sands blast way back in the day. That was a uranium bomb. The problem is that with earth cracking the Colorado River, which is our source of water here in Arizona, right? That uranium has started to go up and up and up. The last 4 years, it's got tremendously worse here in Tucson. And I only get to see that because I get to look at heavy metal levels all the time. So very different than 7 years ago. Now we're starting to see a lot higher rates. So with her, we definitely saw uranium, which we see a lot of skin conditions happen. So she had made a really big impact doing the total body revival course, but there was a point where she was having a hard time getting deeper into ketosis. And the interesting thing is when she put in the fasting trio and she started to detox during the fast, it started to get better. And she started to get deeper into ketosis. And she's like, oh man, I've got to like actually detox this heavy metal. But it was her aha moment that got her to want to go a little bit deeper. But when she shows up, I'm sure she'll let me tell her story a little bit more. But all of us stories are going to look a little bit different. And regardless if it's just you just want to feel better, or you have an autoimmune or a neurological or some other type of condition, right? It all is going to be the same. Any questions with any of that? No? Okay. So what I like to do is I'm super interactive. So if you guys at any point when I'm giving you this lecture have a question, please just unmute yourself and say, Maria, you can totally interrupt me. Please do not feel like you're being rude or anything. I'd rather you stop me in the moment and let's walk through it. If there's something I say that it doesn't quite connect, or there's something that you may want to add or have an idea about because someone else may have that and it may stir a different type of conversation that will be helpful for the group. So I wonder, Andrea, do you have your video? There you go. Oh, wait, unmute yourself real quick. There you go. I just want to introduce you guys. This is Dr. Andrea. For those of you guys that don't know her, she is helping me with this group. And so any questions that you might have, and as we're going through this, if any of you do the toxin testing, we're going to go over that with you. So it'll be either I or Andrea that helps you go through that, and we'll help kind of personalize it a little bit as we're going through this program. So I just wanted her to give herself, at least you guys can see her face and know the person that's going to help you. Yeah. Andrea's a wealth of knowledge. She went through Dr. Andrew Wild's program here in Tucson and got her doctorate through there. She's also board certified functional health and has traveled and all over the world and is a gem to me. So she's kind of learning my style on giving giving these talks and whatnot, but she's going to be working closely with your detox, and she's very privy. So I just wanted to give her a warm welcome to all of you. So
Hi, thank you. Sorry for my delay.
that's okay. No big deal. No big deal. And everybody join along. So if again, if you have questions, and you know what, Gabe, one thing I was going to say to you, because everyone else had been into the top of the Cellular Health Challenge. I'm going to send you the recording to you and Trish, and you guys can watch those as well. The only thing that I think will be helpful is literally just as I'm talking about some of the foundational things, I'm going to still talk about them tonight, but if it helps reiterate anything, or if there's anything I say within there that's looking at your environment and things that we can exclude, it could be just information for you guys to have. If you're like, Maria, I'll never watch it, I'm going to send it to you anyways. You'll have it. It'll be fine. Beautiful. Okay. So let me share my screen with you and then slideshow. Okay, gorgeous. All right, here is my lovely team at Edge, and I can't do what I do without these people. So if you guys have questions, worries, concerns, you guys can always call my office and help. My ladies will literally get me the message, or they're going to find someone who can help you. So please, at any time, please just our team is at your service, please. So all of us are here because this bucket is starting to overflow. And I like to call this the toxic bucket. So all of us are born with chemicals. So there's 387 chemicals that are currently found in cord blood, which is slightly terrifying for the children nowadays, right? I don't think it was that much when I was born. And for some of you that are even younger than me or older than me, I'll just call you younger, right? There were even less, but this is starting to build up over time. So mom is able to give baby any heavy metal that she has and different chemicals and things that they're exposed to during that pregnancy. So they're not really born with a clean slate as we would love to think about it. And as this bucket starts to fill, you can get, let's just say you get mono in college, and then you were in a rollover car accident, and then you get COVID. All these things start to build until you reach the top. And trauma is one of the things that tips the bucket. So trauma, and I don't care if it's the loss of a dog or a car accident or a divorce, all these things are major traumas. They will cause the drain in the bucket to close and you to overflow. And now you can start to have problems with blood pressure or weight, where you either lose a ton of weight or you can't seem to lose weight. You're fatigued all the time. Your brain is just not firing. Headaches start to appear, joint pain. All of these things are telling us that there is a toxic bucket. And I love this picture of the tree. I think it's so great of how the root, what is at the root of your dis-ease, and dis-ease is we love as our disease, right? And it's really a, fe a feeling of not being at ease, right? And if all of these things are starting to feed, and I'm going to talk to you about the 7 pillars of health, but our relationships, our how what we feed ourselves, how we move our bodies, all of these things are part of those pillars, and we can be really good at one thing, but if we're not good at all of them, that will start to cause issues with what feeds the tree, with what makes the trunk and the strength, and what you're going to produce at the top. So I like these two analogies. I think they summarize it very well of what we're all going through. And person can look different from the outside and what they're experiencing, but when it comes down to it, there are certain major things that are occurring. And what it really rolls down to is toxins and hidden infections. And toxins are things like chemicals, molds, parasites, and heavy metals. And then when we start to look at hidden infections, we're looking at things like, oh, sorry, I named all those things. When I look at things like hidden infections, I'm thinking of like root canals within the mouth, or Epstein-Barr, cytomegalovirus, HHV6. These are all things that can also be hidden infections within the body that are not typically looked at. There we go. Okay. It's not delayed there. Okay, so foundation is key. We said that, right? We said all of us are working from the same foundation. We tonight are all of us, our cell is what matters, and how that cell is functioning is going to determine how we feel, because the cell is what tells every organ what to do, what our hormones are supposed to do, how we're supposed to detox. So we care about this little structure more than you know. And it doesn't get as much applause as it should. And we actually have 38 trillion cells in our body. And when I get to a billion, I stop having the capacity to even think what that number could look like. Trillion is just completely out of my headscape. Can't even think. But when these cells are not functioning properly, this is where you're going to start having symptoms. And optimal cellular function is the foundation to any health that you're going to have, and how you are able to live your life and do the things that you want to do. So a lot of you have heard my story, but I will tell my front half of my story kind of quickly, and I want to share as my story continues. But everybody has a pain to purpose story. We don't get into this type of medicine unless we have had some type of episode, as I think most practitioners that are functional health or integrative will tell you. But why it matters is I want to reiterate why it matters from birth and going forward, and from very little. So I was cesarean section, and when you're cesarean section, you do not get the same microbiome as everybody else. And I was immediately bottle fed, which again, not getting that same microbiome, not getting that good colostrum and stuff from mom, which we know nowadays to be so important for baby. And that's the function of their gut, which is later one of my biggest enemies. And I was taken 3 days old from my mom to my first foster home. And so I kind of had trauma right out the gate. And as a foster child, which many foster children are, we become people pleasers and type A personalities. And I don't think that will ever really change for me. But it also makes me a really good practitioner because I care so much. And now it's not really, I'll digress on that one. But the other type A personality in that was a competitive athlete. And the things what happen with endurance athletes is when you are working out over 90 minutes, you start to lower your digestive enzymes in your gut. And the problem is that with endurance athletes is they feed themselves a lot of like shock blocks and these glucose and carbs and things like that, which feed very bad bacteria. So when I was 30, I got bit by a mosquito in Thailand and I got dengue fever, which ultimately led to issues with my colon, which 3 extra feet happened. And then I had to have a resection that later then failed when I had mold in my home. And I also then, as these things were really traumatizing my body, led to my immune system starting to fail, and my viral loads from earlier on in life, like mono and stuff, started to increase until my gut entirely failed and I lost my entire colon and had an ileostomy for a year and a half. So I was fortunately able to be reconnected. And I've lived my life very, very well since that point. But I recently have had, and this is just a very, very small clip of how your day can change. And I know this is really not for shock value, I promise, but this was a perfect storm. So everything and obviously when you feel well, you sometimes forget about your personal care and um you just need to do that self-care and those and all those things, right? You can tell everybody else what to do, but sometimes it's hard to do those things for yourself. But I had gotten COVID in October. I went 8 days later, I went to Mexico. I'm pretty sure that I had a mold exposure while I was there. I got back. I then lost my dog, who was my baby, very, very suddenly. And then I had a sinus infection, which I ended up taking an antibiotic for. And then roughly 3 weeks later, this started happening. And this only happens with exercise. I'm very conscious when this is happening. I don't have pain. It's not epilepsy, although it looks like a seizure. And they're still on this trial of trying to figure out what is going on in this, right? So, but what we do know is that my immune system is very, very stressed. And what we believe is that I have a DNA mutation that can have the potential of creating this. Viral loads are now high. I had trauma, immune system starts to shut down, and now this is how I express, right? So if everything I know, I've got to support this immune system and lower this inflammation. So therefore I can turn that genetic switch off. So again, my foundation is going to be the same, but what I do in the next phase is going to be a little different than you. So when we talk about 7 pillars, I'll talk to you about my pillars and where I went wrong. So, um, so when we look at 7 pillars, we're looking at work, and we can be really good at work, but we may not be um, helping ourselves spiritually in a way that we need. Maybe dietary needs are not that well, or maybe your dietary is great and your relationships are suffering because you're at work all the time, and then you'll go to yoga and you maybe can control your fitness, but yet then you're not sleeping. So all of these pieces will matter when we're looking at health. We can't just support one side and not the other. And this is where the health will start to break down, is when we don't give balance to each piece. So I have these really great pictures that you guys are going to like throughout. I found these and I just found they're awesome. So how your cells become toxic. So your cell membrane is what's called a phospholipid bilayer, and we're going to talk about this in the next slide, but it's 2 layers of essential fatty acids. And those essential fatty acids are responsible for stuff coming into the cell, and they're responsible for what's leaving the cell. And when we're looking about how they're damaged, it's either going to be mechanical, chemical, microbial, immune, or intracellular stressors. So when we look at mechanical, that's something like a physical trauma, where if you were riding a quad and it fell on top of you, that's crush. And so if you were under there for 2 hours, that's going to crush your cells, and that's going to be what's called a physical trauma. If you have lack of oxygen to those cells, so you were not breathing for a period of time, extreme temperature changes, and this is comes back to things like cryotherapy or cold plunging, right? So cold plunging is great when we do it in small doses, but if I tell you to get in for 20 minutes, now we create hypoxia or lack of oxygenation, and now we have damage to the cells. So it matters on timing on how we do these things. Electrical forces, so if you were electrocuted, that would physically damage the cell. Heavy metals physically damage the cell. Adulterated seed oils like canola, cottonseed, corn, and then things like plastics. Sorry, I have to. Oh, I tried to let her in, but that's fine. Chemicals. So chemicals like alcohol, pesticides, radiation, and like ibuprofen. Those are all chemicals. And then microbial, which would be viruses, bacteria, fungi, and parasites. Immune would be things like antibiotics, reactive oxygen species. This is oxidative stress. We'll talk about that. Complement, which is this when your cells, when there's an infection and it brings complement cells in to help kill what's going on. And then cytokines, which is an inflammatory response of your cells. Like if you get something like COVID, your cytokines will go way high to help fight the infection, but they also leave inflammation behind. And then intracellular stressors, again, reactive oxygen species, which is oxidative stress. And then your cells, what's called cell death, which is apoptosis. So the cells are actually popping open. And then leaking of the cell. So the cell can actually become leaking. It become permeable and things will start to leak out of the cell when we get inflammation around the cells. Do you like the all-purpose cleaner for Coke? I think you can actually clean jewelry with it and empty pipes. There we go. Okay, so 5 steps are reviving cellular health. So first is going to be removal of source. And removal of source means starting to remove what's within the body, as well as what is in your environment and potentially causing more disruption. R2 is going to be restoring cellular membrane. So we got to get that phospholipid bilayer to be at its healthiest state so it can bring in and take out in the right manner all the time versus maybe 3/4 of the time or half the time. R3 is renewing cellular energy, so getting that mitochondria to make ATP again like it's supposed to. R4, which is lowering inflammation around the cell. And then 5 is reestablishing methylation. And we're going to talk about these terms. You don't understand them right now, which is totally okay. Some of you do. So R1. So R1 is everyone's toxic burden. We've talked is going to look different, but the foundation will be the same. And you will never get ahead if you don't remove what is in the bucket, but you also have to limit your daily exposures of what's going back in. So if you're taking out and putting back in at the same time, I think that's the definition of insanity, right? So we got to make sure that we're looking at our environment so we can limit our risk as well as take out at the same time so that we can start to get a negative deficit. And anybody will be better if they have clean air, clean food, clean water, clean products, healthy relationships, vitamin G that I like to call gratitude, daily movement, and sunshine. And I know this is really super easy to say, especially when you feel good. But it's way easier to do when you feel bad. Does anybody want some Flamin' Hot Cheetos or some Takis? It's just GMO corn styrofoam. All right, so removal of source. If we're looking at your household products, things that we really want to keep an eye out for are things like parabens, phthalates, and plastics. They're actually saying that microplastics is our next endemic problem here in the United States because plastics, phthalates, and parabens are one of the biggest endocrine disruptors that we have because they cause permeability of the cell and they don't allow insulin and glucose to talk to one another. So we start to have what's called obesogens. So they start to enlarge fat cells, they cause diabetes, and they also cause hormonal disturbances like PCOS, which is basically insulin resistance. But it causes the hormones to derive in a pattern that is such a PCOS. So talc, I actually thought about all the Olympians right now with their talcum powders, that they're putting around I was looking at the shot putters and they have it all over their neck, but these are very cancer provoking. Butylated compounds like BHA and BHTs. So again, these are very carcinogenic. And the reason why, and we talked about this a lot in the Cellular Health Challenge, but when these compounds come into the cell, they attack the cell membrane, and the mitochondria actually have a phospholipid bilayer as well. And the mitochondria is where the DNA start to present out. And so if someone has a DNA mutation for abilities to detox or cancers, let's just say like colon cancer or breast cancer, those genes can be turned on by those chemicals, causing that impedance within that phospholipid bilayer. And when the mitochondria is disturbed, the mitochondria actually help to make antioxidants, and antioxidants are what help get rid of these chemicals and these free radicals. So there can be this very vicious cycle, and we'll go into that a little bit deeper. Formaldehydes, you will also see another word called quanterium 15 or methylene glycol. These are formaldehydes, and we know we put formaldehydes in dead bodies, right? So they probably can't be too good for us, even in low doses, right? Just a little bit. No, really, we should not be taking these things in. Polyethylene glycol, these are what's called PEGs. You can also see 1,4-dioxane when you're looking at those really long labels that you don't know how to read. If you can't pronounce it, it's probably a no-go. Mineral oils are, they're actually made from gasoline, interesting enough. They are, when it's processed out, the mineral oil is what's left from gasolines, and that is not meant to be put on the skin, because anything that you put on your skin is actually going to enter your body. Triglycans, and then PFA. And if you haven't watched the movie Dark Waters, you totally should. So PFOAs were used for non-stick cooking pans, and they were created by a company that were dumping them into rivers, which were turning these cows into rabid cows, and they would have all these tumors. So anyways, in this movie, Dark Waters, you actually get to see how this all kind of played out. And it was the biggest lawsuit in the history, and they're still serving out money for people in the town that started to get testicular cancer, multiple myeloma, breast cancers. I mean, the list can go on forever, and they're actually still dishing out money for that. So they call these forever chemicals. They're very, very hard to remove from the body. Although I will tell you, with the detox that we do, I have seen these levels lower in the system. So I think with the right work and the right compounds, these things can be removed, and these are things we can test for. So if you're curious about what your chemical levels are, they do say that 95% of people have PFOAs in their body, because pretty much every person, when they found a non-stick pan, was like, oh, this is gangbusters, we're using this, right? So most people have this, and if they didn't have them in their home, they probably were exposed in restaurants. So yeah, these are just some top ones that I would say remove. When you guys get your healthy home swaps, it'll be in one of your emails. I'm going to list different swaps that you can do for pans and different household products, and for makeups and skincares and bug sprays and all that good stuff. But there's also some really cool websites that you guys can use. If you're like, I don't know if this is good for me or bad for me, you can actually scan, and it can tell you how bad the product is for you and what would be a better source. So there's one app, and it's called Yuka, Y-U-K-A, which can be really helpful. And there's another one called Think Dirty. So that's a great another app. And then ewg.org is a great resource. You can type anything into there. And they're also cool where you can type in even your zip code, and it'll tell you what could potentially be in your water that they have tested out of that region. So that's a really cool site. So ewg.org. And they also look at any type of skincare products and shampoos and foods and all that kind of stuff. So some really great websites. And I do think that there is a universal shift where all of us are starting to understand how bad these chemicals are for us. And we're starting to create waves to let big farm and big pharma know that we're not okay with these products. And they just they've started to have these newer studies come out, and people are starting to react more from them. So they actually, in the state of California, which is really cool, made red dye number 40 illegal, so they can no longer use it. So they can't have like maraschino cherries and whatnot in their products. So the state of California has made some headway there, and they have just made brominated seed oils banned within the US, the entire US. And these are things that are in Pepsi products, Mountain Dew, Dr. Pepper, Crush, and they actually are a stabilizer, but it's actually an oil. It's interesting, but since to be like a citric acid binder for those sodas, but they've actually just made that ban for the entire US. So I'm sorry if you were like a Crush drinker, but it's not good for you. So anyways, we're making headway. It's progress, not perfection. So toxic burden, when we're thinking of removal of source, this is actually my recent heavy metals test, and I did not provoke this, and I'll tell you what a provocation means. So everybody has some metals. You can't get through life without metals. And typically when we do a test like this, I will give you something called DMSA. And DMSA is a chelator. It tells it to come out from your tissues and your bones. And then we look at your urine over a 24-hour period of time, and then we can see what your overall toxic burden is. This was actually only, this wasn't a typical test, but I did not provoke myself because I was having symptoms. So I never want to tell, if someone is very, very symptomatic, I don't want to tell their body to release more chemicals into the system. What I do is I look at this and I potentially say it's double. So if I provoke someone, we typically will see twice the amount than if you just did without, as well as this was a first morning void, really want to look at 24 hours, which is the best. So here you can see gadolinium. So gadolinium is a radioactive metal, and I've had a lot of contrast because of all the studies they've had to do. I wish I could have done it without the contrast, but in dire need, you kind of got to do what you got to do. So 3 doses later, you can see it's very, very high within the system. This is also not provoking my body, so therefore this will be even higher, as well as thallium. Thallium is something that we can see with like car exhaust. It can, I don't do many grains, but it can come from different rices and different type of rooted vegetables within the ground, and also electronics. So if I were to double, so if I'm looking at these and I'm going to double these, so if I were to look at lead is probably going to be up here in the yellow range, and mercury, it may make it up into the yellow range, but definitely I've had my mercury amalgams removed. I don't have, that much exposure. So mercury, nickel's kind of low, palladium's going to be very low, beryllium's going to be low. But if you look up here at cadmium, this is probably going to go up into the yellow range, as well as bismuth. And arsenic is going to be up here. So when I look at radioactives, I'm going to do a different chelator, and I'm going to talk to you guys about this within the body phase, but I'll probably do something a little bit extra for this because it is radioactive. Most of these heavy metals will be handled by the chelators that we will use when we use them. So heavy metals in particular, if someone has viral loads, heavy metals and viruses have an affinity for one another. And the higher the viral loads are, usually you're going to see very high heavy metals. And through my experience, I used to do protocols for just viruses, and I could get them to move, let's just say 50 points. But if I removed heavy metals, I could get those viruses to move by 200 points. And that's because of the biofilm. They create a film that helps those viruses stay within the body. So it's a kind of a protective component. And heavy metals can change the microbiome of the gut. So the bacteria that's within your gut, you cannot create the diversity that you want, which can start to impede on the immune system, which then allows you to keep that viral load high. So it becomes a very vicious cycle with metals and viruses. So if anybody has high viral loads, I'll be very quick to look at heavy metals and work on those heavy metals and the viruses simultaneously. So any questions with that? No? Okay. Remember, you can chime in at any time if you guys like have a question or a thought or interruption, no big deal. So let's talk about R2. This is your cell membrane. So before, when I talked about a phospholipid bilayer, I know this went right over your head. So these are what's called phospholipids. So it has a head and it has two little tails. So these phospholipids, so bilayer meaning two, they go all the way around the cell. And these are what are required to allow hormones in and to allow signals to come out. And when toxins come in, especially like, let's say, a plastics, they will attach to this bilayer, and this bilayer has electrical charges that help open and close the door. So there's what's called a sodium-potassium pump. One is negative, one is positive. When they get to a specific gradient, the door opens, and when they get to another gradient, it closes. So that's why if you, let's just say you get magnesium depleted and you start to have calf cramps. Now that's causing fasciculation of the muscle because that negative and positive charge with those different electrolytes, they have different charges. That's what's causing that fasciculation. So some person needs potassium, another person needs magnesium or sodium. That's going to regulate the gradient, and now the muscle's going to stop. So just like that with the cell membrane, if that gradient gets to the point where the charge just opens the cell, that means that all those toxins can rush in, and then everything that's in the cell can rush out and do whatever it wants to do. So, and it may not be in the proper shape to do what it's supposed to do. So this layer is made up of cholesterol, phospholipids, and protein. It's 70% made up of phospholipids, and of that, those phospholipids, phosphatidylcholine is actually the most prevalent, which is 70% of those is phosphatidylcholine. So we'll talk about phosphatidylcholine quite a bit within this course, and it will be included in cell membrane products, as well as the foods that I encourage you to eat are going to be very phosphatidylcholine and different phospholipid rich. It's because we need to give you new essential fatty acids. And it's like if you had a pair of old dirty shoes and I give you a new clean one, of course you're going to take the old dirty ones and throw them away, right? So we want to get rid of those old dirty phospholipids so that you have new robust ones to make those signal contacts like you need. So the cell membrane is made up of 28 to 36 trillion cells at any given time. The cell membrane is thin, and it separates the work from the inside and the outside of the cell. And it acts as a gatekeeper. So it creates structure for the cell so that it can hold its perfect, beautiful cylindrical shape. It regulates the flow of nutrients, hormones, and toxins in and out. It's the guardian of the mitochondria, which is that powerhouse that gives you the ATP. And then it's an active player in maintaining your cell's health and functionality to regulate what's happening with the organs and your immune system. So it regulates your liver, your kidney, your colon, and your lymph, which are all massive filters to the body. And these can be very, very important. Sometimes, if someone is having, like if I'm looking at and they're having some liver stagnation or some lymph issues, and when I know someone has lymph, they're going to tell me, Maria, I don't sweat, or really hard to control cold and hot temperatures. So I can't handle the heat. I'm going to faint in the heat. Those are all signals to me that the lymphatic is not working. So if your lymph isn't working, your cell is not signaling the lymph. So now we know that there's probably a cell membrane issue that's also causing a lymphatic issue, right? So they go together. So we always are going to maintain the filters of the body, because we can't get well if the filters aren't working right.
Maria, there was something you said that about the cell and the lymph, and what can the lymph do? Can you just go back one, like?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not going to go back. That's okay. So if your lymph is shut down, so if you can't sweat or you can't regulate your temperature, you feel like you're faint in the heat. So your cell is responsible for sending signals to the lymphatic tissue. So if your lymph is not functioning properly, that tells me that there's a cellular membrane issue because it's not signaling the lymph as it should. And if our filters, which the lymph is your sewage system. So the sewage system, if I take the trash out to the trash can, but then the trash man never picks up the trash can, we're going to get a lot of toxic soup happening, right? So we have to make sure that there is a garbage man to come pick up the trash. And we can detox all we want. You're going to feel really bad. If I try to make you detox and your lymphatic is stagnant, you're going to start to not feel well because the garbage man's not coming to pick it up. And the same thing goes for liver, kidney, and colon. So again, your colon excretes toxic waste. And if you have a really hard time pooping and you're constipated, that means we have a cellular function problem, and there's also a motility problem. And if we can't get that toxic stuff out, we're going to equally feel as bad. So it's very important for us to think about our filters during this process. And that's one of our foundational things to do, is make sure these filters are open and working so that you don't feel bad when you're detoxing. So low or damaged phospholipids lead to leakiness. So permeability of the cell means they become leaky. The door is not shut all the way. It's leaving a small crack. So it's allowing things to flow out and flow in at inappropriate times. Problems with hormone production and transport. This means that even if your body is producing enough adequate hormones, the signal is coming to the cell, but it's not getting in and out like it's supposed to. So it's not communicating what it needs to do. And this is, I've made this analogy before, but it's my typical man that gets testosterone and they don't feel like the guy on TV. And you can only put so much testosterone onto the receptors of the cell, but if they can't get in and out, they can't do their job for you to feel like the guy on TV. So we start to have that problem with hormone production and transportation. We start to decrease the mitochondria's ability to make that ATP. So you start to energetically feel lower. You also decrease the production of glutathione, which is your master antioxidant. So your ability to handle toxins. And as glutathione gets lower and you can't deal with antioxidants, we also start to see that liver becomes more sluggish, lower immune function, and then an increase of oxidative stress, which is when your body can't deal with the toxins or the free radicals from the environment, it starts to be more stressed and inflamed. Okay, so in the cell membrane, you're going to get this in your week 1 email, and this is the cell membrane diet. And some of you had started this with with the challenge, and for those of you who haven't started it, all of the foods that are included in this are really to increase those phospholipids for the cell membrane so that we can start to have those rich phospholipids to get rid of the old dirty ones on the membrane. So these are foods like eggs and organ meat, grass-fed meat, poultry, fish, oyster mushrooms, nuts, sunflower seeds, kidney, lima beans, chlorella, cruciferous vegetables, soy, and quinoa. You do not, everybody's diets can be very different. Every diet is the right diet for the time, diagnosis, and season. If you do not eat meat, that is okay. We can absolutely do this with plant-based people. So, but it's increasing those good phospholipid rich foods. And I share more of those within the diet that I share with you guys. And when we're also doing the diet, I like to make sure that anything that you get that is a root, vegetable, or fruit is organic. And that is because a lot of heavy metals and chemicals are within the dirt and the soil. And and most of those things, you're going to eat the full vegetable. It doesn't technically have like a rind like an avocado or an orange. So when you have something that has a rind, it's going to be a little bit more protected than something that's in within the soil. And then I also teach you within the cell membrane diet how to wash these foods. Even if they're organic, there's rainwater that comes from other crops, how you get that off your foods. So that's all going to be within the cell membrane diet that you guys can follow. And next month is when we're going to start TBR, and we'll talk about that and you'll get access. So don't worry about that now. Really, all I'm looking for is you guys to start putting these good phospholipid rich foods in there and starting to remove um, foods that are not so great for you that have these bad oils, and all of that's within the cell membrane diet. So I'm not a big fan of canola, cottonseed, corn, sunflower, safflower, soy oil. Um, Safflower and soy, or I mean, sorry, safflower and sunflower oils are not necessarily bad oils. They're omega-6 oils if they're cold pressed. The problem is that most of the products that we use are going to heat them over their smoke point, so they become a rancid oil and they cause inflammation on the cell. So there are, and I have this kind of noted in the cell membrane, there's one called Andrea seed oil, which is made with an array of seed oils, which does have sunflower, safflower oil in it, but they are cold pressed. And so they're meant to be put like drizzled on a salad or maybe just eaten in a spoonful or something like that, but they're not meant to be cooked. And if where you'll find these will chips and stuff like that, but also roasted nuts. You got to be really careful with that. It could have, safflower oil, and they heat those nuts at say 400 degrees, and that's way, way, way over their smoke point. So that's going to make that carcinogenic on the nuts that you're eating, that you're thinking you're doing a good thing for yourself. So just be really cognizant of those oils, and we're going to start decreasing the inflammation of the cell with these from those oils. Any questions on this part? No? Okay. Okay, so R2. So one thing I want to mention about all the products that are chosen here, it's kind of a cool story, but so I've done a lot of different detox in my life, and I think this is pretty much the top. And so Dr. Pompa worked with Jordan Rubin. And so Jordan Rubin is the guy, I don't know if you guys know Garden for Life. Most of us have seen it. We see it at Sprouts, whatnot. This guy is a very, very cool guy. I got to have the privilege of meeting him at a lecture once. And I always thought my mission in life was pretty big, but my mission will not top this man's. So he in college, actually, he was very, very sick, and he was having a seizure disorder. And there was a point which he's like 6'4", I believe, maybe 6'6", roughly, something like that. And he was unable to eat. He was basically bedbound, and he I think he said he was 120 pounds, which for any of you know who, 6'6" should not be 120 pounds. But that's kind of actually when he was fasted and got well and was eating whole foods and whatnot, he created Garden for Life. Well, so he most recently started some sustainable farming, and um, what they had found is, so they grow everything. They actually have worms that take down compost, that take down, compost, and then they make the soil, and they do it all without any type of pesticides, heavy metals, or molds within their product. So what they found is they actually had these mushrooms. They were growing like turkey tail and cordyceps and whatnot, and they had these grapes that were picked, and they were near these mushroom substrates. And one of the mushrooms actually started to turn purple from the polyphenols, and so they found it very interesting. And if any of you have read, it's called My Magical Mushroom. It's a documentary. Sorry, but what the mycelia actually have all these information networks that grow underground. So all the mushrooms talk to one another due to these mycelia. So the mycelia actually picked up the polyphenols and the bioflavonoids from the grapes, and they looked at them under a microscope, and they found that they were actually more bioavailable due to the mycelia. So what Jordan started to do with Dr. Pompa is they started to put things like turmeric and curcumin and cardiolipin. They were growing these with the mushrooms, with the mycelia to make it so it's more bioavailable through the product. So this is kind of actually how these were created. And Dr. Pompa used his past knowledge with everything with systemic formulas, with detox to basically create this. And this is why we have this, and it's kind of catapulted us with being able to detox some of these really difficult, like lead can be very difficult to detox, and some of these things like gadolinium and so forth. So it's made us be able to go deeper with these forever chemicals and whatnot that we've been trying so desperately to get rid of out of the system. So we are growing all the time in what we know and how to get rid of these things out of the body. It's not a perfect science. Things like tins and aluminums and mercuries can be a little bit easier to control. Sometimes some things that get into the bone can be a little bit harder, and definitely into the brain, which we have great remedies to be able to use with these. So R2 is all formulated to regenerate the cell membrane. So it's with the cell membrane with those fatty acids, it's very important with the omega-6s and the omega-3s that are actually in a 4-to-1 ratio. So a lot of people will take fish oils, which are just EPA, DHA, and they won't have the right omega-6 ratio. So that can actually cause a disturbance with those phospholipids. And so this has the right unadulterated ratio with those oils. It also includes things like cardiolipin and CoQ10, which are really important for the mitochondria and the phospholipids, and then phosphatidylcholine. So I have created a dosing schedule for you guys that's like a printable. So you guys can look at like how many caps I'm supposed to take and when, and it's like a little printable thing you guys can print off, and then you guys can be able to write on these and know exactly. But basically 2 softs throughout the day, through soft gels without the day, you can divide them up or take them together, and then you can take these with or without food. Shouldn't cause you nausea or anything like that. So R3, R3 is restoring energy of the cell, and without enough energy, our cells can't carry out their necessary functions like detoxification. And if the cell function is lower, the toxins will start to build up, and it starts to lower cellular energy, leading to more increased fatigue, decreased cognitive function, thyroid issues, hormone imbalances, and weight loss resistance. And it just becomes this vicious cycle, because the less cellular energy, the less the ability to detox, the more cellular inflammation, the less ability to create more energy, and round we go. We can't get out of the mill. So this is our beautiful mitochondria, and this is where all the action is. There's actually 3,000. When I was in school, I literally was taught like there was 1 mitochondria per cell. We actually know that there's 3,000 mitochondria in a cell, which is kind of crazy to think about. We just learn more every day. We call it science, but it's science in motion, I guess. So this is that beautiful phospholipid bilayer. So the 2 littles, the head and the 2 tails. So they go all the way around this mitochondria, and they produce the cellular responses, detoxification, as well as genetic expression. So they are where glutathione is starting to be produced. So glutathione actually needs ATP to happen, and the rest of it is compiled into the liver, and the glutathione actually becomes the bouncer at the liver door when everything is processed through the liver. But it has to have ATP. So if there's not enough of that ATP, we're going to lose that glutathione production. And then the less glutathione is able to help deal with the oxidative stress, the more inflammation and the more DNA mutation, more risk of things like cancer or autoimmune situations occurring. So when the mitochondrial function is down, we're going to start to see more hormone dysregulation. And hormones means sex hormones like your estrogen and progesterone, but also as your thyroid hormones as well. And when they're unable to bind at the cellular level, when there's inflammation, the body starts to feel starved of the hormones. So it could look adequate on a blood draw, but also on a blood draw, that's what's in your blood that very second. But then if you look at urine hormones, what's actually being metabolized through, you're going to see that that actually looks way more depleted, and that's probably how you feel. It's because even though that there's enough to try to signal, it's not being metabolized through to the organs as they should be. The so the the body has the innate intelligence to want to heal. It wants to save your life at all costs. And when it's not getting the sex hormones like it wants, you'll start to see cortisol go up. And cortisol has a feedback to try to give you more hormones. But the problem is when cortisol goes up, it starts to release glucose. And then your body has to release insulin. And when it starts to do this inorganically, like instead of you eating food and then it produces insulin to attach to that glucose, this is more like the girl that cried wolf. You keep crying and crying, and then certain enough, the body or people don't respond. Now, insulin is not going to respond to the glucose that's being produced from cortisol. So this is where we start to have some weight loss resistance starting to occur because of the insulin resistance. We also will start to see hormones like leptin and ghrelin go up, which control hunger cravings and weight. Leptin tells us when your body has enough weight on it, and you'll start to produce more abdominal weight when cortisol starts to be elevated. So the other interesting thing we see well, we can see this in men as well, but when we start to have more adipose tissue, estrogen starts to go up. The more estrogen, the more adipose there is. So we start to become more estrogen dominant. Progesterone starts to lower. We start to see this imbalance start to happen. Women start to get more symptomatic because of the discrepancy between estrogen and progesterone. The other thing is that toxins are stored in fat, and this will go into weight loss resistance. So the body is very, very smart, and it wants to protect you at all costs. And toxins are stored in fat tissue, and it's trying to make it so it doesn't make its way to your organs. So you can say, thank you so much, body, for having all this really pretty fat, but it doesn't look so good. So the reason why people start to feel bad when they lose weight or when they start to detox is as the fat starts to burn, the toxins will be exposed into the systemic system. And now you're starting to feel symptomatic from those toxins, or if you're losing weight or at a more rapid rate. And then liver, kidney, lymph, those big filters, right? They can't keep up with how much toxin is coming because they're not used to it. So now you could get symptomatic. So the body has a blessing of giving us those fat tissues to have those toxins stored within that fat, but it may not feel like such a blessing if you can't lose weight, right? Any questions about that? No? Okay. All right. So restoring cellular energy. How do we do this? So first, we got to R1, right? We got to remove toxin. And R2, we got to restore that cellular membrane so that the communication can come in and that those phospholipids can serve that mitochondria. The other thing is providing mitochondrial nutrients. So regular physical activity increases mitochondrial biogenesis, so how mitochondria replicate. Also stress reduction. So chronic stress can lead to the production of free radicals, which will damage the mitochondria and their function. Adequate sleep. So anywhere, let's say 7 to 9 hours, everybody's level is a little bit different. Sometimes somebody's a 10, you can be a 10. Someone else will say that they're a 6, but really trying to get adequate sleep on a regular basis is really important for the mitochondria. So nutrients including B vitamins, magnesium, iron, CoQ10, glutathione, NAC, glycine, and zinc. And also a diet that's rich in these foods. So when we're looking at something like the cell membrane diet, this diet includes foods that have all these nutrients in them. And a lot of some of us don't like specific foods. Like I say Brussels sprouts are a great source of glutathione, but you cannot stand cruciferous vegetables. So sometimes we need to supplement and also the quality of our food is not as good as it used to be. So it's it can't, to put extra. The other thing is when we get very mitochondrial depleted, many times we need to supplement to get us from A to B so that we can replenish the mitochondria, and then we don't need to supplement anymore because now our baselines are back to where it can function. But sometimes we're so low, we've got to put these nutrients back in from some type of supplementation. And then also, we're going to talk about methylation, but we need to enhance methylation. It's very important for mitochondrial function. There is no methylation without mitochondria, and there's no mitochondria without methylation. So we'll talk about that in a future slide. And how about that future slide be now? I put these are, I know we just talked about R3. We're going to go to R5 just because the product that we're going to use is what's called R3, R5. It's called mitomethylator. But methylation is when you consume nutrients and they have to take that raw material has to be converted into a form that the body can use. So that process is actually called methylation. And methylation also regulates, DNA expression. So it's recruited by proteins and then it causes the DNA expression and how it binds the transcription factors to the DNA. That process is called methylation. But methylation has over 200 functions in the body. We don't understand all of them yet, but these are the top main things that we see with methylation. But some people have heard of methylation before. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of his name at the very top of my head. Oh, Dr. or Dr. Ben Lynch. So he kind of made the DNA MTHFR very publicized with like social media and whatnot. And so people started to understand the term methylation a little bit. Most of them thought it was mostly because of their B vitamins. And if they just had methylfolate, it would be what made their methylation happen. There's actually a lot that goes within methylation. And so when I'm looking at methylation, I'm always looking at every piece of the pie wheel. So we don't miss any missing link within the chain of methylation because it's not just methylated folate. So when methylation is turned on, sorry, so yeah, when the methylation gene is turned off, the body's going to struggle with functions of DNA expression, detoxification, reproductive health, cardiovascular issues, hormone production, sleep cycles, and optimal cognitive function. The signs of low methylation can be fatigue, nervous system problems. So what we think is mostly as like adrenal, but it can be central nervous system, thyroid problems, trouble sleeping, and this is really reaching REM sleep. So if someone has a sleep tracker and they can get into deep, but they never really get into REM, it may be problems with low methylation. Anxiety, depression, we can see low immune function, heart issues, addiction, and we actually see the other part to this, I was going to say, was ADHD and inflammatory conditions. So reestablishing methylation, this is where I was talking about with Dr. Ben Lynch with the MTHFR gene. So they actually have seen, which I thought this was really, really cool. So scientists have actually seen that exposure to BPAs during pregnancy, so this is like from plastic from cups, that this led to epigenetic changes leading to the overexpression of the MTHFR gene to offspring onto their children. So the cycle of methylation has a lot of B vitamins like B2, B5, B6, B12, and folate. Then it also has something called betaine, trimethylglycine, and phospholipids that help with the whole transfer. So when I look at a methylated product, I want to make sure I have all of these things included, and it's not just methylfolate, because the genetic expression may actually be more within, say, like phosphatidylcholine than it really is within the folic acid. Um, Methylation and glutathione play very important roles in maintaining the overall health. They're very, very closely intertwined. And if you have issues of low levels of glutathione, you usually have low impaired methylation and vice versa. So when we're reestablishing methylation, we want to make sure we're lowering inflammation, we're enhancing the immune system, we're ridding hidden infections, as well as supporting the immune system. So mitomethylator is what we call R3, R5. You can see my beautiful R3, R5. And this is going to have key ingredients that are included in that cycle. And I've kind of named these products here. These will help to increase more ATP, as well as help with glutathione production, lowering cellular inflammation and creating more ATP for the cells, so you actually have more cellular energy. So when we're taking mitomethylator, really you're just going to take 2 caps per day. You can divide them or take them together. These are with or without food. You will not, these are B vitamins. Sometimes people get nauseous with B vitamins. I actually have not found this with any of my clients with mitomethylator. You will see that your pee will be yellow. That's pretty typical with B vitamins. So cellular inflammation, this is a really cool picture. So I know many of you might not find this very cool, but thanks a lot. Okay, so this is what's called a macrophage. So a macrophage
That's
can
funny. Yeah, yeah. I was gonna text in the chat and say you're such a nerd.
I know, I am such a nerd. Can't help myself.
You can hear it.
I get so excited about this. Okay, so macrophage is what gobbles up and eats like bad cellular debris. And as this as this cell goes along, the more chemicals that we start to have into this, we can start to increase pro-inflammatory cytokines. So things like interleukin-3, TNF-alpha. So these are just inflammatory cells that are coming out. So when they attach to a fat cell, right? Because your fat cell is what's going to keep the toxin in there, right? So the macrophage is going to dispose this toxin into the fat cell. But this is the interesting part. So when they dispose of those, let's say plastics, into this fat cell, they actually make these PPRY cells. And these cells actually create larger and larger fat cells. So those cells are going to try to hold more toxin, and they're going to try to hold more toxin. And meanwhile, your butt keeps getting bigger and bigger. And the problem with this PRY cells right here, or PPRY cells, is that they don't respond to glucose and insulin like they're supposed to. So now you start to have more insulin resistance. And you're every time the cell gets bigger, you're just going to see the bigger fat deposit, bigger, but it's trying to hold more and more and more toxin, which I think is kind of crazy that we can the cell, the adipocyte, has like created its own mutation, and it becomes its own little like mutant. Yeah, we have mutant fat cells, guys. So what we want to do is get rid of the toxin so we can create less of these PPRY adipocytes, and we have less and less insulin and glucose metabolism issues, leading to less hormone disturbances. So that was my geekiness of that of that slide. Okay, so causes of cellular inflammation. So we've got toxins, heavy metals, chemicals, hidden infections. Bad oils. These are adulterated seed oils cooked past their smoke point. Let's just say olive oil. I love olive oil, but you're not going to want to fry with olive oil. You're going to want to have it at like 150 degrees. So I'll share more about smoke points with oils and stuff with you. And then keeping your omega-3 to 6 ratio in a 4-to-1 ratio is very important for those phospholipids. And then the other last thing that causes cellular inflammation is dysregulation of glucose and insulin. So you can see the vicious cycle with the toxin getting into the cell and causing the insulin resistance. So the more and more of those mutated fat cells, the more insulin resistance, but of course you're going to have more inflammation, and then round and round and round you go. This is why people can't get off the wheel. This is why our country keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. or the world really, right? So the risk of cellular inflammation, this is the underlying cause of chronic disease, and gut inflammation leads to leaky gut syndromes, inflammatory bowel diseases, and there's a nerve that goes from your brain to your gut. And when your gut is pissed, your brain is pissed. It's a big highway. So people are starting to have cognitive decline or brain fog, headache, word recall issues. This is all going to tell me that there's something going on within the gut. And I'm always going to ask about the gut in that scenario. So vascular inflammation, this is also inflammation within the vessels. This leads to development of atherosclerosis, heart attacks, and strokes. Peripheral vascular disease, so this is like the veins that are going away from the heart and going into the legs. We actually see that the more insulin resistance that someone has, the more leakiness of the vessels within the lower legs, and someone has peripheral vascular disease. They get a lot of inflammation within their lower legs, hard for them to control that inflammation, and it gets very achy, hard to push that fluid back up because of that leakiness of the vessel. So, and we start to see a lot of metabolic concerns. Reducing cellular inflammation. So managing stress. Oh my God, that's so fun to say, right? We just manage stress. We just make it all go away. We can, managing stress is really kind of looking back at the 7 pillars. How do we create balance amongst all of them? And guys, give me 1 second. I need to open my door because my dog is crying and I don't want you to continue to hear him cry. He's a puppy, can't handle himself. In here. In here. Okay. All right. So managing stress. You get a puppy, and that's how you manage your stress, right? Because you're going to get all that oxytocin from the love that your puppy's going to give you. He will never cause you any stress. Okay, so vitamin G, which is gratitude. So the more gratitude you have, every day I have my own gratitude journal. Because even when I want to get into my own pity party, if I remind myself of all the things that I'm grateful for, things start to the mountain seems to seem less high. Meditation, yoga, gardening, anything, doesn't matter. If it stresses you out to meditate, maybe you like to crochet. I don't know. Something that gets you into a state, maybe it's hiking, maybe it's journaling, but something that allows you to get into flow and really connect in with yourself is really important for your mental and your physical well-being. Good sleeping habits, limiting blue lights, so computers, screens, TVs, whatnot before bed. Looking at sunrise and sunset can be really helpful with getting your body in circadian rhythm. Detoxification methods, so things like fasting, intermittent fasting, total body revival, learning how to do deeper fasting can help with detox. Glucose and insulin sensitivity is increased with fasting. We create something called autophagy, which those of you that have done some fasting with us know that that's the Pac-Man that eats the cellular debris when you're in a fasted state. And we'll go way more into that when we next month. So don't even worry about that. And then total cellular revival can help manage cellular inflammation, chelation. We're gonna talk more about the drainage enhancement part with like liver, kidney, lymph, using like red light and cryo and hyperbarics, PEMF, all these types of therapies. These are all tools. And something that I try to reiterate to people is that you're not going to fix your cell by just using these biohacking techniques. And they're great. They are adjuncts. They are to get us to move the needle a little bit with drainage, but it's not going to tell the metals to come out of your tissues or your bone, or it's not going to tell the mold to come out of your brain. But can they help with drainage so that you're able to release these from the body? Yes. So these are all ways that we can lower cellular inflammation. Inflam4 is the product that we're going to use. I really, really like this product. It helps modulate the immune system, and we can get a better healthy response to inflammation that comes in. So instead of the body telling you to call 911, maybe it tells you to call a neighbor. But it has it's got bromelain, and it's got boswellia. Boswellia is one of my favorite products for inflammation. It also has some dual forms of ginger. This is all that myceliated when I talked about those mushroom substrates. So the bioavailability of this is enhanced probably any type of turmeric or ginger that you've ever taken. So it's got some fermented rosemary, and it's got hydrolyzed eggshell, which helps with these glucosaminoglycans, which play a crucial role in blocking the degrading of collagen. So this is a really great product to use and can help lower prostaglandins and regulate that immune system, blood flow, and your overall healing process. So Inflam4, you can take actually 1 to 3 of these a day. You can separate them out, take them all at once. I'm kind of a 2-cap person. That's my jam. But everybody, and I'll reiterate this right now, I always want you guys to be low and slow to start. So if we're starting new product, I would prefer you start with, say, one of the R2. See how you feel with it. No problem. Then maybe the next day you take a mitomethylator and make sure that like you don't have any brain fog, or you feel very clear. It doesn't make you shaky, or let's just say randomly nauseous. Everybody's symptoms are going to be a little bit different, but I'd rather you say, oh my gosh, I took a sugar pill than anything. And then we can go to 1 twice a day. So everybody's dose can look a little bit different. So sometimes people have Herxheimer reaction, meaning their body is trying to detox and the filters are trying to keep up, and it's maybe not keeping up as quickly as somebody else. So one person may be at prescribed where they're taking 2 caps of everything every day and they're doing just fine, no problem. And the other person is taking 1 cap a day of everything and they're struggling with a little bit of brain fog. They're maybe having a little bit disturbed sleep. And it's not that they're reacting poorly to the supplements, it's that their body is trying to keep up with the detoxification that's already started to occur. And even though we're putting foundation in, we're going to have some detox reaction from what we're putting in the prep phase. So we'll talk about this more at length of what that looks like for everybody, and everybody can ask me questions if they have a problem and they need us to personalize and help them with dosing of anything. But start low and slow. Start 1, and then you can add in 2, and then you can add in 3, and we'll start to space them out. And you can, and as long as you tolerate everything, then great, you're off to the races. But yeah, always start low and slow when you're adding anything new. It's way easier to put in than it is to take away, because if you start all 5 products on the same day, you don't know what made you feel bad, then we've got to stop everything and put everything back in individually. So always better to go low and slow. Anybody have a question with that?
Maria, so when we start this, you'll be available for consultation about that stuff?
You can either do 2 things. If you need a call, you can always email me, or you can always ask in the Facebook group. We do have a private Facebook group. You can direct instant message me if you want, or you can make a post about it as well. And if you need me to call, you can always email me, and I'll have my email available for you. You may have it, but if you don't, I will email it to you so you have it. So if you have some individualized questions, it's absolutely. So if you're having problems with Inflam4 and you're like, I just can't take it, we'll talk about what to do.
Okay, thanks.
Because sometimes I even have people half the capsule. I have delicate flowers. Sheila doesn't know who I'm talking about, but what I do is I actually have them open the capsules and take like basically half out, or start like a quarter, and then kind of move from there. Most of the time go ahead.
I have a question, Maria. Are you going to reiterate in an email tomorrow exactly the dosage, because I haven't been taking notes.
Perfect. Nope. Yeah, you're absolutely fine. I have a
Okay.
printable dosing schedule for you in the email.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I try to think of everything, but if I didn't think of something, this is our perfect time, right? You guys are the guinea pigs. Okay, so those are our core, the first three I talked about is our core prep. So now we have core downstream. So our core downstream is what we're talked about as liver, kidney, lymph, colon. So we want to support those. And we want to support all of these because they're big filters out of the body. And the liver could work really well, but if it then meets the kidney and now you have impedance, you have a problem. If the kidney flows really well, but it meets impedance at the lymph, now we have a problem. We don't have a garbage man, right? Or if it can't take it out through the colon, we also don't have a garbage man there. So each of these systems are very important. So drainage enhancer, this is really going to combine liver, kidney, and lymph. And it helps us break down these and acts as like cleansers from the system. And so what I typically will have you do with a drainage enhancer, start again one a day and then maybe one twice a day. You can do three. I'm typically a one twice a day type person. Can be taken with or without food. And this will be in the printable as well. So the gut enhancer is wanting to work on how the gut is functioning, as well as putting good microbes back within the gut. And this is all within that mycelia matrix, which I really absolutely love. And it works on the integrity of the bowel so that the bowel is less leaky and it has good motility, and we're decreasing inflammation and biofilms within the bowel. So this can be really helpful those with any type of small intestinal bowel overgrowth, H. pylori, or even just when we're looking at diversity, are not having good diversity, meaning that the certain bacteria within the bowel are very one-sided. So we want to have a lot of everybody, and we're going to start putting those things back in with this product. So I typically do one twice a day, but just start with one once a day. And I have seen patients do up to two twice a day, but I don't do that a lot with patients. So I would just stick with one twice a day, and you'll find that within the printable as well. That's just an optional dosing. So in this month one, you're so top things, you're going to receive weekly emails. This is going to give you additional content and support. This first email, I promise you guys, it's going to be the one with the most amount of content. Just, I'm not trying to like make you drink from a fire hose, but I want to make sure that you feel like you have all the support with a lot of questions that you guys may have right from the start. And then I promise you, week two, you're not going to feel as bombarded and this like, oh my God, I have to click through all these things. I give you some really quick videos to watch on like the cell membrane and methylation, and goes a little bit deeper into methylation. I talk to you about how to take the products, dosing schedules, that kind of thing. So the first one is going to feel a little bit much, but I promise you it'll start to lessen as the month goes on and you're starting to feel like you have your footing with everything. And then if you're not in the Facebook group, I would really encourage you to get in the Facebook group. This is where we're going to have any type of questions, additional support, and maybe just some jokes, from Lamont. So it's a great place to put them. Any successes, any downfalls, anything like that. The Rupa link, if anybody's curious about doing any type of toxic burden, they want to know their heavy metals or something like that, that link is within there. And then I try to have you limit other supplement intake right now. And that is because if you're watching a play and there's 20 actors on stage, you only can pay attention to one or two of them, right? And that's how the body is. So if you have 10 products that you take at home and you're like, how am I going to take these? There's probably a lot of intermingling between the two. So if you take like a CoQ10 at home, I promise you all your CoQ10s in this, all your B vitamins, your Ds, your minerals, everything is here. So if you have something really, really specific that you use, let's just say a very specific vitamin E or something like that, go right ahead. But I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. So just be really fixated on these supplements. If you do have a Lifeline supplement, you can reach out and ask me a question about that if you think, but try to limit other stuff that you do so there's not a lot of noise within the system. We want your body to know what we're trying to make it do. And then you can follow the cell membrane diet. If you have questions about that, or there's certain dietary restrictions or something where you're like, Maria, I can't do that. Even if you're vegetarian, I promise you, I can work you through it. As best you can, work through the cellular membrane diet, which will be included in this week one's email. And then next week, I'm going to give you some healthy home swaps. You guys do not need to worry about that at the very moment. You got enough going on right now, but we'll start to look at things within your home that you might be able to make some swaps with. This is Charlie. I don't know if you guys have seen Charlie. And then I've kind of said before that your total body revival is going to be open on month 2. So don't worry about that now. So your body has the innate intelligence to heal. You just have to remove the interference first. All of our interference is going to look different, but we're going to get there foundationally through this prep the same, and it may look different as we go on, but we all need to remove it. It's just going to look different. Okay. All right. So what do we got? Questions?
I have a question about, so I did the preliminary, I sat in on the preliminary webinars that you had. And I'm really curious about to see my toxic metal level. And so I guess the test I'm looking at is the urine toxic metal test.
Beautiful.
And then you gave me, I picked up some DMSA, chelator. Do I take it right before I do the test? Like,
so
does it have to be taken like within 24 hours? The last dose of it has to be taken within 24 hours of testing, or?
So typically the girls put a little label on there, and it'll say take 1 cap before bed, and then it'll say 1 cap on rising and 1 4 hours later. And then you just collect your urine for that 24 hours. So from like bedtime to bedtime. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. It
That's
was
okay.
last week I picked it up. And it does say that on there.
It's all mud now.
Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. And it's fun. It's fun to be able to see a needle move, right? When you get to see like, that's what I did to my heavy metals or my chemicals or something. So it's good to have, it's nice to have data, right?
Right.
You don't absolutely have to have it, but it's nice to see a number move, because we all like to get a medal, right? We always like to have like a little, look what I did, right? We got a little sticker.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and it makes it science, right? Like, did it do what it said it was going to do? So it's cool for you guys to actually see its benefits. And it's not just the benefits that you feel, but it's nice to be able to see that you actually remove something from your environment that's going to cause issues in the long run. Beautiful.
How do we sign up for that if we want to do the testing?
I included, so if you go to your welcome email, in that welcome email, there's a link for Rupa. And you can click on that, it'll give you a couple different options of like, you can order metals or molds or anything. And then when we get those, Andrea and I can go over those with you. And then we can just talk about how we might change your program.
Okay.
Yeah, just to be a little personalized. And then you can do one post too. And then you can just see how you move the needle. Yeah, Miss Lamont.
So when I got my medals done, you coached me through it, as I was horrified to see that my skincare, my bad skincare was off the chart. And so I've been using the Yucca app. Wow. I paid for it because you can actually key in on the search bar for a product. You can't.
Oh, wait, I muted you somehow. I'm sorry. I did not mean to mute you.
There we go.
There we go. Sorry about that. You said you
it's
paid.
worth it. It's like $15 a year, and you can just search without having to physically have the box with the barcode.
Oh,
Anyway,
cool.
I thought, oh my God, where am I going to find these great skincare products? Because I just assumed, stupid, I thought, oh, dermatologist recommended. Silly me. What was I thinking? All that stuff is like a 20 out of 100. So Vichy, it's CVS, Vichy from France, gets
Hmm.
excellent ratings on everything.
Cool. Yeah.
Cleansers,
Yours
creams,
was yours parabens? What was your, I remember it was,
yeah.
yeah, parabens. And there was a specific type of paraben that you had really high, which was like consistent with like a specific skincare line. And yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, but that app is great. I love that app.
Yeah, it's really cool. And yeah, Think Dirty is another one. And these are just fun things that we can use as we want to start looking at our environment and make changes. I mean, if you're going for a new shampoo, why not look at what the next one that you could get that could be a good one? And that's just a great way to start making some changes. And yeah, same thing with like with makeups and things like that. I'm a big fan of Jan Iredale. They tend to do a really good job. You'll find a line that you love and you'll just stick with it and it'll be the thing that you do. So sometimes you have to go through a few frogs, which I've done with shampoos before. My mates probably think that I'm crazy because I've got like 10 bottles of shampoo. Like, they're like, what is she doing? I'm like, I didn't like the way it felt. Few frogs, but most of the time I use, and we can always share. If you find something wonderful, share it with everybody else and be like, hey, this would really, really work for me. So, Miss Sheila.
So I will be finishing my second body phase on August 12th.
Okay.
And my plan was to do my heavy metal testing again before I saw you on September 5th or something. Should I wait? Should I wait until I do the brain phase, or should I go ahead and test?
You know what? I actually would love for you to test before you did the brain, because if we wanted to make a change, like let's say something is being released that maybe needs a little bit of like DMSA or different type of chelator, like we could make a change when you're doing your brain phase.
Okay, I'll keep it as planned then. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. I love it. You had a good one. Okay. And yeah, we'll personalize everybody as we go along. We can share what, things that we're experiencing. I'm going to have a wild ride just like the rest of you. So yeah, I don't know what to expect. My body is different than where it was, and so I'm just going to have to roll with it, right? It's just what it is. So yeah, I'm super thrilled to do this with you guys. I'm hoping we have 13 signed up, so I'm hoping that everybody can kind of join us this week, and we'll share the recording with everybody that missed out tonight. So we missed out, no big deal. And there's again, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So I hope you guys have a beautiful evening. Be in the Facebook group. If you're not in the Facebook group, do not be scared to ask questions or make comments or whatever. We're all here for each other. We're going to be with each other for 90 days. So you might as well get to know each other. And yeah, and if anybody somehow doesn't get the email or something, please let me know. But you guys will all have your emails on tomorrow morning. And if there's anything in there that you don't understand, reach out to me. And then I'm looking forward to reviewing anybody who gets any of the toxic stuff. Yeah, Miss Lamont.
Okay. I read in your recipes you want us to eat 2 eggs in a smoothie. I assume these are, pastured raw eggs.
Yep.
The whole egg or just the yolk?
You can do either the whole egg or just the yolk if you want to.
And that's safe.
The yolk is the most important part because that's where all the phospholipids are.
Okay.
Yep. That is safe. I know it's scary to think about, right? But it is safe.
Okay. Yeah.
I know we did it. And if you would prefer to cook your eggs and not do it like in a smoothie, you can do that too. But it's really important that and if you totally can't do eggs, we can absolutely talk. So if anybody has an egg affinity, let me know. It's really just about putting those good oils in and getting those phospholipids. So we just change out what we're doing.
So why is there a benefit to raw?
Oh, not really, actually. it's okay if you cook them. It's just that the smoothies make it kind of nice. Yeah.
Okay.
And it
okay.
actually kind of creates it thick and creamy. But
Okay.
yeah, there is actually really no difference. There was actually a big study that was done, which Dr. Peter Attia had debunked, like the Arnold Schwarzenegger, like, I'm sorry guys, you really didn't have to be doing these raw eggs, right? But where they used to crack them in their mouths. But the egg is actually one of the most perfect foods because it has methionine, leucine, isoleucine, valine in it, which are all really important for creating muscle matrix. And you can't create muscle matrix without those 4 amino acids, but it also has really good phospholipids and proteins. So it is a really, it has vitamin A, vitamin E, has a lot of good nutrients in an egg. So if people don't have any histamine responses or having issues with eggs, we try to really push those during this because of the phospholipids that we're going to get from them. But if we can't do it, we just change how we're going to do it. Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. So everything is workout and manageable, and yeah, can always pivot. All right. So good to see you. So glad you're back, Gabe. And I'm ready to rock and roll. We've got 90 days ahead of us and super, super excited to share.
Great.
All right. Have a great
Thank
night,
you.
guys. Take care.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.